Hi there. Spring's knocking on the door, winter's nearly over, but it can still get a bit cold sometimes at night, so just how do I keep warm in an off-grid plastic shed? Right, my shed is an off-grid shed. There is no power going to my shed at all, but I'll get to that in another video. The biggest problem I'm facing with heating this shed is it is made of plastic. And as much as I'd like to have a wood stove in there, I have visions of me sitting there and it melting down around me. However, with the way things are going and the way everyone's taking the mickey with fuel costs, I'm quite tempted to have a go installing a wood stove at some point. And maybe that's something I'm going to work on in the future. This is how I get round keeping myself warm when I'm in the shed. I can be in the shed for about 3 to 4 hours a day, and it gets quite cold in there in the depths of winter. And even at this time of year, as we're coming out of the winter and into the spring, I've tried various things over the years. I did use LPG at one point, but that's hard to get round here off the pump. So I came up with this idea, and this is a Chinese paraffin stove made for indoors, and I'll go through how that works. Right, so let's have a closer look at this heater. As you can see, it's a Tosai 233 and it's made in China. These things are quite common in China and Japan. I believe in Japan it's probably the same in China. They don't have central heating, and so they rely on these paraffin heaters. And you might think, oh well, that's awful with the fumes. These heaters are quite clever. You have a combustion chamber, which is very efficient and kicks out a lot of heat. Reflector plate at the back to reflect the heat back at you, and the sides remain cool. The top, however, doesn't, but it doesn't get red hot, so just be careful what you put on there. And this vent here burns the fumes off, so you don't get any paraffin fumes. You do when you first light it, okay? And ignition is by holding this down, and you'll hear this beep. So I'll just hold that down. And there you can see the flame. Hopefully you can see the flame igniting the wick. And once that's done, you let that go, and it'll slowly start heating up. Okay, there's a stop button here to turn it off. Just, well, it's already off actually. Yeah, heater's off, but that stop button will turn it off. Also, if you knock this stove over, it'll turn itself off. And it's got a CO2 gauge inside it, so if it detects any CO2, it will automatically turn the heater off. So it's very, very safe. Okay, so we open the grill, and then you see this combustion chamber there. And like I say, if I press down the lever here, you can see it igniting the wick. Okay, there's no tanking in it at the moment, so it's turning itself off. I'll get round to that in a minute. There's a fuel gauge here which is showing red. The tank is low, and there's no tank in it at the moment, so it's showing red. If there's no tank in it, it turns itself off. If you go to lift the tank out while it's operational, it will turn itself off. The wick, as you can see, is round there, and they last for some time. I've been running this now a couple of years, and I've not changed the wick yet. And to fill the stove up, it comes with a fuel tank, and there's a fuel gauge there, and a safety top here. You can't just unscrew that. You have to do, it's like a medicine cap. You have to press down and then unscrew, so that's a safety feature. And there's a release button there, so once it's in, a button presses that and releases the fuel into another tank that's at the bottom of the heater. This is a 20-litre barrel. The paraffin, I put the tap on myself at the top. You can buy those taps off eBay. I think I got a 3-pack for about 10 quid. This is the cheapest way to get your paraffin if you can. You can buy the pre-pack 5-litre, I think they are, containers, but they're very, very expensive. I go to a big fuel wholesaler and they sell these as 20 litres for 35 quid, I think that is, 32 to 35 quid. And I'll get about a month out of one of those. So here's the fun bit, filling the fuel tank. So first off, I checked that the tap's off, which it is. It says it's got an on-off indicator on it. And we press down on the filler cap. And there's a fuel gauge there, and they recommend, as soon as you see it at the top with that window there, you stop, because it needs a bit of an air gap at the top, so you don't get an airlock. Okay, and carefully, it can be messy this, but you know, it is what it is. And I just fill that and keep an eye on the window. Okay, so it's just gone to the top of that window, so I've turned the fuel off. And I'll put the safety cap back on. You hear it clicking. And if you turn it that way, no drips, because it's got that release button at the bottom. I've got enough for about maybe one more fill in there. Okay, so we take our fuel tank and we put it back into the stove. It'll only go in one way. Close the lid. The secondary tank there that you fill fills up this primary tank at the bottom. Okay, and now you can see the fuel gauge has gone back to full. So now we've finished with all that fooling about. I've got the stove back where it should be, where I usually have it, in the corner, sort of behind where I work on my computer. It's a bit small in here, but I couldn't find a heater any smaller than this, really, that would do the job. There's no concerns really, there's plenty of ventilation in the shed, and I do have a proper CO2 meter by a mark. And to light the stove, we just press the buttons that we've mentioned before. You'll see it's lighting the wick. Then release. Leave it on maximum for a short while, and then move that lever down to the normal. There's not much play in that actually, there's not a lot of difference between maximum and minimum. That'll start glowing really nice and orange and kicking out some serious heat after a while. So now the stove's fully up to temperature, and it only takes about 2 or 3 minutes. You can see a lovely orange glow coming from the combustion chamber, and it's kicking out some heat from that vent at the top. Slightly warm on top. You could dry your gloves out on there, you're not going to set fire to anything. And as mentioned before, if you were to knock this over, it'd turn itself off. If the sensor inside it detects too much CO2, it'll turn itself off. I'll just give you a quick demonstration of that. If I was to pull this fuel tank up now, sort of simulation of a situation where it's been knocked over, it'll turn itself off. Just watch. There you go. The stove's also been on a good half an hour, and you can see I'm getting 000 on the CO2 meter. So there's no particles of nasties in the air. Again, very safe. So that's how I do it. That's how I keep warm in an off-grid plastic shed during the winter. I'm usually in here 3 to 4 hours a day during the winter, Monday to Friday. It keeps me warm. I don't have it on all the time. Like I say, I'm perfectly safe. I've got a CO2 meter, which is also a temperature gauge. Once it gets through about 27, 28 degrees in here, it's too much. I turn it off, and when it cools down again, I put it back on. That saves me some paraffin. When it's really cold though, yeah, I have to have it on all the time. If you've got any better suggestions about how I can keep warm in a plastic shed, please drop it in the comments. Bear in mind that this is off-grid. There's no on-grid power supply to this shed at all. There's no gas, there's no electric. But how do I power everything in here? Well, that's for another video, which I'll reveal soon. I do have electric, and I do have heat, as you've seen, and I can cook in here, as you've seen as well. Anyway, spring's nearly upon us. I won't be needing to have the heater on much longer.